Yeah, so the project's really started with an interest that me and the writer Garrett Shanley had in placebos and nocebos. And we read this book called Sleep Paralysis, Placebos, Nocebos, and the Mind-Body Connection, a study in medical anthropology by Shelley Adler. It was quite a academic kind of research book about placebos and nocebos and how, her basic kind of hypothesis in the research was that if you really believe, like growing up through your culture and everything, that you can be cursed by something, or that something could like kill you, like a shaman or something, or a spirit, you can actually die. And that's been documented with the Hmong refugees, Ratcha tribe in Australia with the bone pointing and all that. So it was quite interesting to us. So we were interested in folklore anyway, because we're Irish and we grew up with all these interesting stories. But like in Ireland, we had like these wise women who were basically, later they became called witches or something, but they were like healers who understood like nature and herbs and ways of curing people. But within curing, they also would use like placebo techniques, which make people feel better, so their mind would make their body cure itself. So the arrival of Christianity, colonialism from Britain, and kind of was almost completely wiped out. But around the same time as we were colonized by Britain, the Philippines was colonized by Spain. There was like a 10-year difference. They have there's more than 7,000 islands in the Philippines. They still have a strong tradition of folk healing in certain regions. Our research kind of led us there, and then we went to Cebu and Sequoia to learn about it. And we met witch doctors and tribal chiefs. Told us about their folklore and about their healing, and we had rituals done to us, and it was really interesting. And we also shared stories between our folklore, their folklore, and then we teamed up with a Filipino production company to do it as a collaboration. So yeah, bit of a long story, but that's how it started, and that's where we got to. Well, I was interested in shamanism before this film. Shamanism is basically just like a nature-based belief system. It's something that's been kind of lost, but like a lot of religions started that way, and a lot of belief systems started that way. So with this story, it was kind of like the ancient and the nature-based kind of belief system clashing with this post-colonial, kind of neo-colonial culture of consumerism, capitalism that we now live in, which also is responsible for the destruction of those ancient belief systems. So that's kind of what interested us. Yeah. I think we wanted to put a bit of a spotlight on it through genre. Make people more aware of their choices. Like in the West, we the whole world has become so homogenized. You can see fucking H&M and Zara on every street, in every city of the world now. And the stuff, like to buy a T-shirt that costs like €3. And they get cheaper and cheaper every year. That means that some other people have to cut their costs every year, because these companies have to make profits, higher and higher profits every year. That's under the form of capitalism. That's how it's set up. So the only way they can keep increasing their profits is to keep reducing costs elsewhere. So that means that people have to suffer in other countries, and it's unjust, and something we felt passionate about and wanted to make a story about. And because we work, I think genre is an interesting way of kind of looking at something like that from a different lens. I hypnotize them. I'm joking. They like the scripts, they like the stories, they like the themes that we're kind of interested in talking about. So I was lucky that Ava Green and Mark Strong had seen Vivarium, and they really liked it. So when we wanted to make this new film, they were already interested to read it, and then they read it, and these themes were interesting and important to them also. So they came on board and wanted to make it. So I think maybe usually it's the script, and maybe they've seen something you've made before and like your work. I think a lot of actors just like working with directors that they like their films, you know? Yeah, I mean, like different techniques for different stories. So Vivarium is very, surreal story, and was inspired by a lot of surrealist paintings, like Magritte's work, and it's set in a world that's not really real, a kind of artificial world devoid of nature, and we get to see what happens to a couple who get trapped there. So it's like an allegory for this kind of life trapped in a kind of consumer capitalist culture. This film is much more set in the real world with real world consequences, maybe more on the surface political ideas, and probably more inspired by 70s kind of Hammer House type movies and like The Omen, and there's a bunch of references. Actually, Bergman films as well. Just different. And our next story is probably a little bit more in the world of like similar-ish, not to Vivarium, but like in a not the real world, a kind of allegorical world that's like separate from like a mirror of our world. So it's like visually different to reality that we're going to do next probably. But I think each story we do or interests us will have a different technique to tell that story. I know that like some people love Vivarium, some people hate it, and some people wanted our next film to be more like Vivarium, but like that's to me I prefer to try different things and develop storytelling techniques and work in different ways. Yeah, but I mean, there's different. Like what we tried to do with this film is not have any kind of real difference in terms of shooting or difference in terms of color grading. Everything kind of has the same amount of saturation, contrast, etc. But they're different countries and different cultures, so inherently they have a different color palette. The Philippines is tropical, it's hot. There's a lot of more vibrant colors just everywhere that you go. So we didn't want to kind of do something, the way like a lot of films will, American movies will cut to Mexico and everything will be yellow or something, like a different grade. We wanted to keep the photography pretty much the exact same, but actually just show the difference in cultures through color and music and sound and everything, because that's actually what it's like when you're there. But we worked with a writer from the Philippines. She's also a director, filmmaker called Ara Chaudhary, who helped with the scenes that were set there to make sure that they're authentic to the... she's from Cebu, the island that the film is set on. The actor, Chai Fanassier, is also from that island, Cebu. So, and the language that they're speaking is Cebuano, which isn't... It's a dialect within the Philippines. It's not Tagalog, which is the most spoken language there.